One is tempted by one's own desires, being lured and enticed by it. And then, when that desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. So you mothers, who have conceived and given birth to a child, this same process happens in our spiritual life to all of us. And this is not what you want to do, is to give birth to sin. But look where that happens. Back, the conception of this whole process happens back in the temptation by our own desires. The temptation to do wrong, of course. Temptation to do right produces life and good fruit. So, because of that, we have to recognize and deal with our desires. We have to deal with any desires that lead to the bad, and we have to foster the desires that lead to good. So, if you have a desire to avoid responsibility or avoid conflict, I heard a story, even just driving here, about somebody who was doing all kinds of stuff to try and avoid a conflict with a person. Or if your desire is to waste time by entertaining yourself, boy, that's very easy to do nowadays. That's why we won't let Renz have one of those ideas. He would waste time entertaining himself. Facebook. Or if you have a desire to overeat or overdrink. See, you can lose your love for Docs when he calls you away from the food and says, come and let's sit down and talk. Or overdrink. So if you drank 5 cups of coffee, you're going to have to stand up in the middle of my talk and go to the bathroom. Oh, but even worse, if you were drinking 5 cups of whiskey, we'd have an even bigger problem. We conceive a lot more sin that way. Or if you get angry at your husband or your coworker, or if you desire revenge, those are things that our desires lead to and with emotions, and we have to recognize them and don't let them happen. We have to work on trying to minimize that. Okay, so what's the goal? What do we need to do? Now we're in the second half of the talk. What do we need to do? Well, the goal is we don't decide anything based only on our desires. You have to know what the desires are to make a good decision. But don't base your decision on desires. They need to be taken into account, but not determined. Remember, one perfectly good reason is that, as you all know, desires change. They come and they go. There was a very interesting example I heard on the radio. Somebody had done a study they were studying marriages. So in the United States, they took and they asked people every year for 10 years to rate themselves 1 to 10 on happiness. So starting off with their wedding and then on their 10th anniversary. But they did this around the world too. And so in India, they were arranged marriages. In the United States, a parent would probably be thrown in jail if he arranged a marriage for his kids. So the population turned out to be very different. And the interesting thing is, in the United States, it was rated like 12 on a 10-point scale of happiness on the wedding day. That for the women. The men had about 7. They were a little bit nervous. And then, whereas on the arranged marriages, the happiness was like 1 or 2 on the arranged marriages, okay, on the wedding day. But every year, the average happiness of the emotional marriages went down in the United States. They went down over 10 years. Every year in the arranged marriages, they went up on average. And this shows the folly of making a big decision, or any decision, primarily on emotional desires. No people in the United States or very few, would ever get married if they didn't desire to get married and be together. So that's like the best. Whereas arranged marriages, maybe no desire at all to marry the 85-year-old butcher. Unless unless you're a 92-year-old. That's not part of the sort of the spirit of the talk. Okay, so the goal is don't make the decisions by yourself. And I have to throw in one key thing to help you. You've got to avoid media manipulation. I mentioned this, I think, last week. You know, we tend to think we have to know everything, or we can't be good people, we can't be good citizens. You know, election time comes, you're supposed to know everything and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is, most of what's said, as we went through the Ten Commandments last year, most of what's said is done from a non-Christian or an anti-Christian principle. And there's a lot of money that helps us to do that. Well, we've got to avoid our emotions being manipulated by the media. Many of our desires, in fact, we wouldn't even have if, you know, you wouldn't even know what the new car looks like if you didn't see it advertised on television. You know, long before anybody, 10 people in your neighborhood have that new car, you know, you want it because you saw it 100 times on television. Or as someone said last time, Veronica's underwear. Oh, Please tell my wife I don't even know the name of that.
But you know some Veronica.
Here is an example of how much it's there. It's easy to just talk about this. So, you know, you guys get junk mail, advertisements like this. You get 50 of these things. So, okay, look at this. Just to see the other day. Here is soap. You know, in a little bottle, like keep you clean, keep you smelling good. Look what it is. It's a bottle of soap. It's advertising, and the title is "Start a Steamy Relationship."
For soap.
I don't know what it's advertising Veronica's underwear is. Okay, and you may say, oh, well, one thing in there. Another one. There's a barcode on here if you want to stick it with your iPhone. Okay, another one in the same pack a little farther on. This is shampoo. Okay, it's called Root Awakening Frizzies or something. Look at the title on this one. Lather, lust, repeat. Now, this may sound funny, but I do have to say, you know, I just want to warn you, and maybe even warn you because maybe even if you've moved here from another country, you don't quite understand this is this nation, great nation, you know, and great society and lots of good media and all, I mean, electronics and all that kind of stuff. But it's not going to establish the kingdom of God. It's working indirectly or directly to tear it down and destroy it. And you have to see it that way and minimize your contact. Don't let the shampoo people put lust into your vocabulary and into your heart. Okay. 1 John 2:15 puts it even stronger. You say, oh, Brother Tom, he's getting a little bit off, you know, strong here. Listen to what Brother John says. The world offers you only the lust for physical pleasure, the lust for everything we see, and the pride in our possessions. That's why we're not letting Renz get one of those iPads. I hope he's not really going to ask for one because. So, lust for physical pleasure, lust for everything we see around us, and pride in our possessions. These are not from the Father. These are from this evil world. So minimize the influence, the contact, the internet, the movies, the DVDs, the music on the iPods. Minimize it. Or when you're listening to it, have your guard up and realize these are enemies who are trying to infiltrate your heart and stir up your desires